everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us for our first lunch with Director Browne for the 2022-23 school year. My name is Shazia Vlahos, and I will be the moderator for today. Our format has changed slightly for this month's session, and we actually are in the process of putting up a pre-recorded segment for you. Thanks to our Toronto Catholic members who have sent us in questions in advance. And a friendly reminder to please mark your calendars. Last Friday of every month is when you have an opportunity to ask the director questions related to the system. Future sessions will be live during the lunch hour. So today's session covers a few themes based on the questions we've received. And those include school supports and specialized programs, health and safety protocols, extracurricular activities, school transportation, and truth and reconciliation. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Director Browne.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Shazia. It's really nice to be here today. I really enjoy doing these sessions because it is that opportunity. Ask whatever you want, and I'll do my best to answer, and hopefully that answers a lot of people's questions as well. So really enjoy doing these sessions. We're committed to continuing to doing so throughout the school year. And as Shazia said, on the last Friday of the month. It's been a really busy month as we welcome back students back from the summer break. And, I'm excited to share that about 99% of our students are back to learning in person in our schools. So it's been great to spend the first day of school in some of our schools. And I've had an exciting start of the school year because I've been visiting schools. For the first week, just connected with principals and staff and parents. So on that note, a really special thank you to Pope Francis Catholic School, St. Antoine Daniel, St. Mother Teresa, just to name a few of the many schools I got a chance to get out and meet some students, staff, and families, just to witness the wonderful supports that are taking place and the programs that are happening. So now that our new school year is underway, I want to thank everyone once again for their continued support as we continue to transition out of what's been a very difficult time into closer to what we hope is closer to normal. So I want to take this opportunity to provide some updates, allow me to answer some questions that you might have had about the year, and hopefully we get a chance to do that today. So before we begin with the opening prayer, though, I do want to highlight that when this session airs, and as Shazia mentioned, we're just pre-recording it, but it is going up on National Truth and Reconciliation Day as well as Orange Shirt Day. So that's important to remember and honor Indigenous children who never came home, but also to raise awareness and to reflect on the fact of what took place within our residential schools as we honor the survivors, their families, the impact on communities. So we're doing a lot this week. I just came from a session before I came in here about a virtual visit to the Woodland Cultural Center, which was formerly the Mohawk residential school in Brantford. So maybe I'll talk about that later, but a lot's happening around the system this week. So a huge thank you to our board's equity department. It's planned a lot of important activities all week long, but also leading up to this important day on Friday. So as a sign of respect and to honor all of the survivors, their families, and the impacted communities, I'm going to pause for a moment of silence. And after that moment of silence, I'm going to read the land acknowledgement. Out of our deep respect for Indigenous peoples in Canada, we acknowledge that the Toronto Catholic District School Board properties are situated on traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat peoples. We also acknowledge the land covered by Treaty 13 is held by the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and Toronto is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Covenant. We also recognize the contributions and the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people in Ontario and the rest of Canada.
Thank you, Brendan. Okay, so we're going to move along. As I noted at the start, we've received a number of questions related to student supports, particularly around any possible learning challenges that students might have faced due to the last few years of the pandemic. So the first question comes from Oksana. My child is in grade 7 now. However, for almost 2 years, she was learning virtually, and we're worried that her literacy skills are not at the level of other students. What are some of the supports that are available for our child?
Thanks, Oksana. Just recognize that it's been a tough time these last couple of years, and I understand the concern. I would start with connecting with the teacher. So making sure that you're connected with the teacher and very aware of, to get an idea of how your child is doing in grade 7, and then looking at what supports we can put in place. So that's really first and foremost. That's your main point of contact. And whatever programs we're putting in place as a system, they're all important to support the work that's happening in the classroom with your teacher who's there every day. So make sure you're staying in close contact about how your daughter is doing, and then we can talk about what those supports that are put in place. So on that note, we've been really focused on providing ongoing support and resources to support and assist students who are dealing with potential learning gaps due to the pandemic. I mean, we know that students have different learning styles, and we have dedicated support staff and our teaching staff to help to support them on their journey. So things that we did put in place and we continue to put in place, we had some great summer programs that we're running this year that were really focusing on literacy and numeracy from K to 6, and also from grades 7 and 8, literacy and numeracy, as well as Saturday programs. So we're getting some of the data back from that and getting some really strong results when it comes to some of the ways in which students have been closing those gaps that they might have had. And we are continuing to offer those in the fall. So again, connect with the teacher and make sure that you're aware of what's available with the in-school support, but also there might be some extra curricular outside of school support available as well. We're also working really closely with our external partners. So we've got community-based partners that are also providing supports as well. We want to make sure that we're limiting any barriers to access some of these programs. So again, connecting with your child's school, they have an awareness of what's in the community and what they're offering at school. And that really close connection with the teacher is what's the best way in which we're staying on top of knowing what the gaps are and then knowing what's available to help us to support, to close those gaps, to work together to do so.
Thanks, Brendan. And so moving along, so from that, I know you just spoke to some of the primary grades. The next question comes from Winston, who is asking about supports for secondary students. Can you let me know what supports are available to help both my children who are in grade 9 and grade 10 in high school to improve their math skills?
Okay, good. Thanks for asking this, Winston, because sometimes we do focus on, looking at the early reading and things like that in elementary, but we've also been really focused on secondary schools in those areas, as you mentioned, math, but for us, both English and math, so literacy and numeracy skills. So just as we're looking to support students at the elementary level, we also have programs and resources to support and assist families at the secondary level, because we know that some of our students who entered high school in grade 9, that's, at the start of the pandemic, were impacted by some of the restrictions of in-person learning, especially in some of those core subjects, as you mentioned. So to address that specifically, we developed some after-school programs to support students struggling with English and math. So those are available through the school, and we recommend, again, same thing as I said to the elementary, contact the school, your math teacher, and they're willing to provide some supports as well. I know from what's coming home in my household as well that especially in math, my daughter's math teacher this semester has said, before school, after school, I'm here. So it really is important to be talking with the teachers to be able to provide, because they're always willing to provide that help and that extra support. There's also the really great resource that's available for math specifically in the high school level. There's a program run through TV Ontario called Mathify. And Mathify is currently offering free one-to-one tutoring support programs in students from grade 4 to 12. So you can go into tvomathify.com and there's details on the program, because it really is actually a connection one-to-one support when it comes to Friday from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Saturdays and Sundays from 3 to 9 p.m. So there's a way to go on there, make a connection with a real person, one-to-one math support as well. So that's just another resource. But I go back again to connect with your child's teacher. They're going to see them every day. They're going to know where they're struggling, what they need to work on. And our teachers are really above and beyond. I've seen it in so many examples. So making sure you're connected with what they think they can do to support and what some of the other supports that are available from some of our programs in our schools. And then I mentioned that TVO program as another way in which you can continue to connect and support. So we're really trying to wrap around to support as best we can. You mentioned math, but math and literacy specifically in secondary school.
Thanks for that, Brendan. This is actually a really great question that we have coming up in addition to all the great questions that we receive, but it's around specialized programs that are offered at the board. We've actually received a number of really great positive stories recently in the media about some of our schools and their specialized programs. So I think you have an opportunity here, hopefully, to answer the question that comes from Lisa, who's saying, my child is interested in choosing a field in the skilled trades. What does the board offer?
Oh, Lisa, I'm so glad that you asked this question because I love to talk about the amazing programs that we have. I've been visiting them throughout the system in our skilled trades. We've got so many different programs, specialist high skills majors programs that really are focused on training and getting into those amazing trades and great work opportunities that are so desperately needed throughout Ontario. So we have programs, we have specialist high skills majors programs. So those are programs that run at schools that provide students with really focused look at specific economic sector while earning credits towards their diploma. And there's co-op opportunities that go with it. So the programs are really focused on the courses that they need to be going into those certain areas, as well as providing opportunities for co-opships. So examples of, we call them SHISMs, so specialist high skills majors programs. And they're focused on construction, engineering, automotive and transportation, hospitality, tourism and management. There's culinary skills programs. I was at Mother Teresa school last week visiting their culinary arts program, and they're just getting started. So I do have an invitation to come back when they're cooking. But just these are programs that are run by people with the real expertise in the field. So people that worked in the hospitality sector, or worked in restaurants, or worked in the automotive sector, or in tourism, and they've come and they're teaching now, and they're providing these opportunities for students. So I'm really proud of the work that's being done. I was at Bishop Merton Thomas Morocco. They've got an unbelievable technology program and robotics program and engineering, as well as an auto program that's happening there. So there's a lot of great opportunities in some of our schools that are really focused, and they've got the space, they've got the equipment, and they've got the expertise to be able to offer these really unique programs that are focused on skilled trades, that are really looking at connecting with local employers, providing opportunities for to be connected with people that they might be employed with in the sector. So it's really important. Secondary school open houses have begun this week. So they're a really good opportunity to learn more about the different programs that are offered in our high schools. So go onto the website. I think it's there on the screen now to find out some more information. Connect with the secondary school to be able to look at what they're offering, because there's a lot of different programs that are really great opportunities. Really proud of our teachers doing this work and our students who are making these amazing choices to be involved in these programs. So lots available, lots of opportunities. I look forward to you finding out more about it. Connect with the school and the principal and the teacher, though. They'll be able to help to point you in the right direction, or the school's guidance counselor.
Thanks for sharing some of those opportunities, Brendan, and your recent experiences having an opportunity to visit the schools as well. We're going to move along to the next theme here, which is focused on health and safety protocols at schools. Of course, this remains top of mind for a lot of us. And the next question comes from Denise. My child has underlying health conditions, and I'm worried about what measures the board is taking to protect children in similar situations, since health measures like masking have been dropped by the province.
Thanks for the question, because it allows us to highlight a lot of what we've learned over the last couple of years. So I do understand the concerns, especially as you mentioned, Denise, the idea that the underlying health conditions for your child. And so a lot of what we learned throughout the last few years continue to remain in place. We do remain really connected with Toronto Public Health and with those health officials locally, as well as at the province. So I'll start there. We were meeting weekly, but almost daily at the height of the pandemic. But we've recognized how much we learned through that, and we continue to still meet. So we are always liaising with public health. We're always finding out what is going on out there that we need to know about, and how we making sure that we're able to support in our school. So number one for us is about being connected, working with public health, and being able to stay connected and look at what we can do in our schools. But there's a lot of things that we put in place throughout this process that remain in place. So when we looked at upgrading our ventilation system, when we looked at the ways in which HEPA filters are in our schools, the processes that we put in place, everything from hand washing stations and protocols that go along with that, they remain, and they remain part of our world moving forward. So I think that we've learned a lot about public health, and we've learned a lot about the things that we can do to promote public health practices. And even though things like masks are no longer required, when I'm in schools, I'm seeing examples of, some people are continue to still choose to do so. And that's something that we are promoting as a respectful and welcoming and an inclusive environment for all of our families. So we have proactive measures. We continue to have signage up in our schools to make sure that it's displayed. Facilities and we're reminded to promote and encourage hand washing, sanitizing, hygiene, etiquette. Our custodial staff just do amazing things. And in every school that I visit, our custodians are just so proud of the work that they're doing, because they really know the impact it's making on students and on families to feel that sense of assuredness that cleaning and protocols are in place. I also really want to highlight the ongoing encouragement to continue to use a daily screening tool. That's something that we have sent home. It's also updated on public health. It's one of those things that public health has found that their data has told them that the more families use the screening tool, the better we're able to stop the spread of COVID-19, but also any virus or any sort of ways in which could impact the school. So that's something that we're also relying on families as well, but also continuing to encourage, because it really does make a difference. So I want to encourage you to know that whatever your child is comfortable with continuing to do, we are supporting you with that. We're continuing to encourage that. And a lot of those practices and best practices we've learned along the way continue to remain in place.
So Brendan, you briefly touched on this, but I'm going to ask you if you can maybe expand on the measures that remain at schools related to ventilation. We have a question from Franklin speaking specifically about HEPA air purifiers and whether those will remain at schools. So hoping you can expand on some of the ventilation measures.
Yeah, for sure. We made a huge investment in upgrading our ventilation systems and HEPA filters. So, all of our HVAC systems, we've upped the number of times that we're changing filters. We're using the highest grade filters. Again, things we learned along the way that are now best practices and things that we've established as our new protocols. So the upgrading our HVAC systems as well as the filter changes is really important. The HEPA filters were also important too, because we went above and beyond even before the ministry started to support that. We spent about $3.5 million in total upgrades to our ventilation systems throughout the school. So those are those investments that, yes, they were part of the pandemic, but also those are the investments that are long term. So they improve the ventilation in our schools, and they remain in place right now. We've got over 5,000 HEPA filters and units, 2,000 replacement units that are all going into every classroom in the system. So we currently have HEPA units in every classroom. They're in our public spaces, in our offices, and they do remain there. We continue to use them. So again, things we've learned along the way, those investments that we've made, they were big investments, but we think that they've gone a long way toward improving ventilation, air quality in all of our schools. So something we're going to continue to benefit from.
Great, thank you. I'm going to be moving along to extracurricular activities in schools. I know we had a bit of a pause over the pandemic, and families are curious to know what is available right now at their child's school. So the question comes from Tiana. If COVID cases increase, will the board reintroduce restrictions on extracurricular activities?
I recognize how important extracurriculars are. If you're on this, you hear me say every time. I've got two girls, one in elementary, one in secondary. They're both coming home from cross-country practice now that we're in the fall. It's kind of that back to normal again. This is a fall sport, things that they're involved with. There's the leadership opportunities. There's trips that are happening right now that I know are happening in our schools firsthand through my children and through my visits throughout the system. So, and I also know that they happen because our staff know how important they are. I mean, as a teacher myself and as a principal, I loved coaching. I loved running clubs and activities because I know that it matters to students. Students find different ways to connect in schools because of the opportunities that we provide, and they happen because of our amazing staff. So our staff, we're really looking forward to doing a lot of these things this year, and I know that they are happening in our schools. So right now with track and field happening and trips happening and clubs and Model UN, and I mean, they're all happening in our schools in different ways. So a huge thank you to our staff. We continue to follow the advice of Toronto Public Health, and we continue to work really closely with TPH when it comes to your question about will we reintroduce restrictions. Right now, our advice from Toronto Public Health continues to be in the recognition that these are really important opportunities for students. And I think the ways in which we've learned a lot along the way in terms of how to make them safe, we've also learned how important they are. So our commitment is to continue to offer through the work of our amazing staff opportunities such as sports and bands and clubs and activities throughout our school year, and we'll always do so with the partnership of Toronto Public Health. We had a lot of our extracurriculars that were initiated in schools in May, and so we've had those experiences in May and June. We had field trips and things that were restricted, but we've had experiences in the spring, and now we're going back into the fall. We know how important they are, and they are happening in our system. We're just going to continue to be connected with public health, continue to work with them in their guidelines. But as things are now, we're really excited that these are happening in our schools and really thankful to our staff for continuing to offer these opportunities.
Great. Thank you for that. Just a reminder to everyone, I know as we noted at the start, this is a pre-recorded session and it will be posted on Friday. So if you do have any questions that come along the way, as always, please feel free to email the communications department and we can provide you with a response at comdept@tcdsb.org. Also, if you have a question that you think is local in nature, feel free to contact the school office and they'll be sure to assist you as well. So the next theme that we're going to be touching on is transportation services. Unlike the last theme, I know there have been some reports in the media, particularly at the start of the school year, and actually are continuing around transportation services for families. So the question we have here for you, Brendan, is from Victoria, asking why Toronto Catholic is not doing more to address the school bus service issues at certain schools. It's a major problem and an inconvenience for working families.
I want to start, Victoria, by assuring you that we are doing everything that we can. So the idea of not doing more is something that we're working really hard, and we have been throughout the summer, throughout the spring, to make sure that we're recruiting and retaining drivers in order to make sure that we have our bus routes covered. I understand it's frustrating. I understand that many families have experienced that frustration because of, in certain areas, some challenges when it comes to our routes. We've had to double up some of our routes in order to make sure that we could provide busing for all students. So I know that that's had an impact on families. So thank you for your patience as we do. Unfortunately, recruiting and retaining bus drivers, though, isn't really a Toronto Catholic specific issue. I receive a daily a media monitoring update in my inbox, and I do note articles in newspapers everywhere from Kenora to Guelph to Windsor to Kingston, talking about bus driver shortages. So this isn't a Toronto specific issue. This is a province-wide issue that we're working really closely on to make sure that we can provide that support. So thank you for your patience, but please know that we're working closely with the Toronto Transportation Group to be able to, that's the consortium that provides busing for all the boards here in Toronto. And we're working really hard to try to resolve this matter. That TSTG is also working, they're working around the clock with our bus partner companies that are to keep that transportation portal updated in a timely manner so that parents can be aware of delays. And, I would encourage you to, that consortium group is the one who's responsible for the buses. So if you have concerns, please reach out to the consortium group. I think that there's a number that is going to come up on the screen that you can call, and they are very happy to take your call and talk about any issues that might be coming up. So we are working hard. We are trying to do whatever we can to attract responsible and caring drivers for our students and retain them to make sure that they continue to do the work throughout our system. So this isn't unique to us. We're doing the best we can within the context of Toronto, and we are going to continue to do so.
Thank you for that. We actually received 2 questions this morning. I believe those are the last 2 questions that we have, and they don't fall within a specific theme here. So I'm just going to jump right into them. One of them is around the reorganization. Juliana has reached out saying she received a letter from the board mentioning there will be a reorganization in September and wants to understand what that might mean for her child.
Thanks for this, Juliana, because this is something I know that is something that happens every year. Sometimes it's more dramatic than others. Last year was more of a dramatic year because of the pandemic and because of fluctuation between the number of students here in the Toronto and with our surrounding boards. It was maybe more of a system disruption. However, this is something that happens in every board every year. And let me be really kind of the easiest way to put it is that when we're projecting our staffing, our staff do a really good job and are really close every year with being able to project how many students are in the system. Ultimately, and then we staff based on that in the spring, and we go into August, and we know we have our schools set up. However, every September, in every school board in the system, in the province or in the world probably, some students show up, some students don't, for a variety of reasons. You have to actually know who the students are in the classroom. So in some schools, you probably would look at your own school and recognize that some classes are really big because we've had more students arrive than was anticipated, or some that might be smaller than we thought because not as many students arrived. And that happens every year. Because we're funded per pupil, we need to make sure that we are able to maximize our resources to make sure that we have adequate classes. So sometimes that means making a really big class a little smaller, and sometimes that means making a really small class and reorganizing so that we're maximizing the number of students that we can have in our class. So that stabilizes over the first 2 to 3 weeks in school, and that helps us to kind of reorganize to be able to make sure that we're having appropriate staffing in place. So we don't have classes that are way too small, which isn't good for students, or classes that are way too big, which aren't good for students. So in elementary school, that happens in the first couple of weeks. It can mean the recomposition or the changing of students in the class. Sometimes it can mean changing the teacher. I know that in my daughter's grade 6 class already this year, there has been a change as we work through this. But the commitment is that this is settled, by the end of September, with the changes kind of landing in the week that follows. So we recognize and we really appreciate the leadership and the decision-making from principals as they facilitate these changes where necessary, because they understand the communities best. They understand the dynamics of the teachers and the students to make sure that they are liaising with families and connecting and sharing that. So we send that notice out every year to make sure that people know that in these first few weeks, changes might be happening, but things will be settled by the end of September. And this does happen every year. So it really is just making sure that when we have more students than we thought or less students than we thought, that we are creating the appropriate classes to make sure that we have appropriate classes that aren't too big, that aren't too small, that are the right size to optimize the learning for the year. So again, it's something that will happen next year. It will something that will happen the September after. We appreciate people's patience as we work through it together.
Thank you for that, Brendan. The last question we have, I know you touched on this at the start, is related to truth and reconciliation. Given all of the upcoming observances that we have Michelle who emailed us today asking about what the board is doing to address recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
So yeah, I did mention this earlier. I'm glad that this was asked today because there's been a lot happening this week around that issue, and a lot that we've committed to from a big picture perspective as well. We start off in Toronto Catholic. We recognize that actions speak louder than words, and that we recognize in this work that there is a lot more that we need to do. So by integrating the experiences of residential school survivors as well as those affected First Nations community into our curriculum, it helps to ensure that students have that understanding of the troubling history on the negative impact of the residential school system. As I mentioned earlier, I was at something here at the CEC just before I came into this video recording, and we did a virtual tour of the Mohawk Institute, which is now called the Woodland Center in Brantford. And we had some live interaction, Q&A with someone from the Woodland Center. But we did a walkthrough. It was a 45-minute tour, walkthrough of what it would have been like for survivors. And there were some residential school survivors that were speaking as well. And it was very humbling, very powerful experience to be part of. And we're doing this on the day that this live with the director is airing on Friday. We're offering this throughout the system. And we have, as of right now, and Friday there might be a few more, over 300 classes have registered to be a part of this as well. So to be walking with and walking through and listening to and learning from residential school survivors is something that we continue to commit to do together. Our board stands in solidarity with Indigenous communities in Canada by raising the Every Flag Matters flag at every school in our system. We do partner with the Woodland Cultural Center there, in Brantford, relatively close to us. And those opportunities, not only that virtual opportunity I talked about, but we're really looking at ways in which we can get our students to be visiting as well, to be part of it in person, because we think it could make a really powerful impact. What else are we doing? Our Indigenous Education Department's been offering workshops and lesson plans from all the way from kindergarten to grade 12. Specifically this week with Truth and Reconciliation Week this week, but all throughout the school year, really embedding that in our curriculum in meaningful ways. We do have 40 classes that are gathering at City Hall to attend the Indigenous Legacy Gathering, and that's on the 29th and 30th this week to honor residential school survivors, but also learn about that rich cultural heritage of Indigenous peoples in Canada. We're hosting an Interfaith Symposium that is this Friday as well, that is really focusing on reconciliation of our faith leaders as we do this work together to implement those calls to action, which are number 6 through 12 within the TCDSB community. So lots of things happening throughout here in Toronto Catholic this week specifically, but they're just some of the many initiatives that are implemented throughout the board to address the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And we just continue to commit humbly to learning and to listening and to putting into action those commitments that we've made to make sure that we're providing opportunities for our students to learn, to listen, and to know more about our history in partnership with our Indigenous community leaders.
Thanks so much, Brendan, for sharing all of that information and talking a bit about the initiatives underway. With that, everyone, thank you so much to all of you who've submitted your questions in advance. Thanks to Brendan, our Director of Education, for his time and for answering the questions that we've received. Just a friendly reminder to all of you, any communications that are sent out to families and any of the latest updates related to the board can be found on our website. Hopefully you've noticed that we have a new refreshed website, and the link is tcdsb.org. We have a section there for communications that have been issued to families, and you can click that and have access to what was sent out. We also include a list of all of our high school open houses, dates and times that are available. I'd like to remind grade 8 families that secondary school open houses have begun and are taking place throughout the month of October. As we near the beginning of October, we would also like to invite you to join us in commemorating a number of observances, including Latin Hispanic Canadian Heritage Month, Women's History Month, National Principals Month, Autism Awareness Month, and Learning Disabilities Awareness Month. Again, more information can be found on our website, tcdsb.org. Please, again, remember that the Lunch with the Director sessions are the last Friday of every month, and we will go back to our original live format on Friday, October 28th. Hope to see you there. Thanks, everyone, and hope you have a wonderful weekend.